Is this just some meat you picked up from any old butcher around the corner? Can you seriously expect me to eat such cheap meat? You should reorder from a high-end butcher. If a refined lady like me eats this, I'll get sick. Is this some sort of joke, Mrs. Connolly? Even if it is, aren't you taking it a bit too far? Naomi chuckled as she looked at the meat I'd prepared. Surely, the meat I had prepared was something anyone could buy, and I reconsidered that maybe, with Naomi's indulged upbringing, she might not be able to appreciate its flavor. But, the deliciousness of a dish isn't solely about the taste of its ingredients. Naomi, it seems, is unaware of such an essential thing. So, I've devised a plan to teach Naomi the essence of cooking, something any housewives should know. I was certain this strategy would work. I am Helen Connolly, a housewife in my 60s. I live with my husband, David. We have one son, Joseph, is already married and has built his own family. Joseph and his wife live near us. Because of that, we often have exchanges with them. However, there was one thing that troubled me. My relationship with my daughter-in-law, Naomi. Naomi, who claimed to be brought up as a high-class lady, had quite a selfish character. Mrs. Connolly, I want to eat some delicious sweets. Can you go to the popular shop downtown and get some right now? Eh? But isn't it known for its long lines? If I go now, I might get to stand in line, but they'll probably be sold out before I can buy any. Can we do this another time? One day, when I was visiting Joseph and Naomi's home, Naomi suddenly blurted out such a selfish request, and I finally said no. At my words, Naomi let out a big sigh and said, "You don't have a right to refuse. Just hurry up and go buy it," and she forcibly kicked me out of the house. Thinking that I shouldn't further upset Naomi and complicate things, although reluctantly, I decided to head to the popular bakery downtown where there was reportedly always a line, at 3 p.m., when the sun was still brightly shining. Sure enough, there was a line in front of the store. I joined the end of the line and waited for my turn. As I gradually moved forward, a feeling of hope sprang up in me that maybe, just maybe, I could buy some. But at the same time, I was feeling exhausted. The weather today was quite good, and it was so warm that it was described as unseasonal weather on the weather forecast. Because of that, the temperature was quite high, and the sun was exceptionally strong. I was starting to feel nauseous and was thinking, I may not be able to do this after all, but since the line was gradually moving forward, I endured. However, just when I thought I could finally buy some, all the pastries were sold out. I was disheartened, thinking I was so close to being able to buy some, but I held it in because it wasn't the bakery's fault. Then, out of courtesy, I stopped by our regular bakery in the neighborhood and brought back their most popular pastries. However, the moment Naomi saw them, her face filled with anger. "Are you really trying to feed me such cheap pastries? You're a real monster, Mrs. Connolly. I'm sorry, but I can't eat these. Could you please dispose of them?" She spewed such harsh words. David and I ended up eating the pastries. I was quite torn about whether to discuss this matter with Joseph or not. I seriously considered consulting Joseph about this issue, but I was scared to say anything for fear it might cause a rift between him and his wife if he took this matter to heart. However, taking advantage of this, Naomi's attitude escalated even further. Especially when she was alone with me. "Mrs. Connolly, I'd like some high-end sushi today. You will buy it for me, won't you? Mrs. Connolly, can you come do the chores? In my parents' house, we had a maid to do all the housework. Mrs. Connolly, you're practically like a maid, aren't you? Mrs. Connolly, I'm bored. Can you be my conversation partner? In my parents' house, there was never anyone who would let me be lonely. There was always someone by my side. But now, there's no one, so please substitute for them, Mrs. Connolly." Using her past as a rich lady as an excuse, Naomi piled on her demands. Worse still, Naomi was careful to only make these outrageous demands when David and Joseph were not around. In front of David and Joseph, Naomi was modest and quiet, playing the part of a good wife. So much so, that David would say things like, "Joseph sure has a great wife. He's a lucky man." And Joseph himself would say, "I'm glad I married Naomi," and cared deeply for her. But Naomi's nasty behavior only surfaced when she was in front of me. There was no bad blood between David and me, and I could have consulted him about my relationship with Naomi, but I was scared he might not believe me. So, I kept Naomi's rude behavior to myself, did not consult with David or Joseph, and just bore it alone. No matter how painful it was. "If you tell your husband or Joseph about this, I will make you regret it deeply. I can even pull some strings with my father's power, you know? So, don't resist needlessly." Naomi threatened me like this. I don't know the specifics of what power Naomi's father holds, but if it's true, it's scary. The problems I couldn't discuss with anyone kept growing and gnawing at my heart. Still, I couldn't muster the courage to ask for help. Then one day, my son and Naomi decided to come over to our house. It was Joseph who suggested that we have family dinners occasionally to strengthen our bond. I was initially very supportive of Joseph's idea. That is, until I knew the real Naomi. Now that I knew Naomi's true nature, I'll be honest, I was not looking forward to these dinners. I decided to buy some meat from a local butcher shop and make steaks, hoping it would put Naomi in a good mood. I wanted them to eat it fresh off the grill, so I decided to cook it after they arrived. So I seasoned the meat and waited for them to arrive. "Mom, Dad, good to see you today." Before long, they arrived at the house. In front of Joseph and David, Naomi was acting rather reserved and, with a smile, she said, "I'm looking forward to your cooking, Mrs. Connolly." When I told my son and Naomi, "I'm making steak today, so please enjoy," Naomi replied, "Cooking all by yourself must be quite the chore, let me help you," and made her way to the kitchen. Initially, I thought everyone was stepping into the kitchen. However, as soon as Naomi saw the meat on the counter, she screamed, "What is this?" "Let me guess, you bought this from a common butcher shop, didn't you? How could I eat such cheap meat? Order it from a luxury butcher shop. If a lady like me were to eat something like this, I'd get sick. Mrs. Connolly, is this some kind of joke? It's a bit too much even for a joke, don't you think?" Naomi said this, pointing at the meat. Her voice was so loud that it brought David and Joseph into the kitchen. "What's going on?" they exclaimed. "Mrs. Connolly was going to feed me this cheap meat. This is unbelievable. Does she have no sense of common decency? I can't eat this." Naomi vented her complaints to Joseph, who had just arrived. The two of them were taken aback by Naomi's sudden change, possibly because she always acts quite demure in front of Joseph. "It looks like perfectly good meat, doesn't it? What are you talking about? This thing is like dog food. I come from a high-class family, you should have got the meat from a premium butcher," Naomi protested. It's one thing for her not to like it, but this was excessive. Besides, Naomi didn't understand something crucial. The enjoyment of a meal isn't solely about the flavor of the ingredients. With just one method of cooking, the ingredients can be transformed. It's probably my role to teach her that. Feeling this way, I set up a certain plan. "All right. I apologize for preparing such cheap meat. I'll get some from the luxury butcher shop. Could you wait a little while?" Upon hearing this, Naomi seemed satisfied, nodding her head and saying, "You should have done this from the start." When I asked her about the luxury butcher shop she often uses, it turned out to be quite pricey. It was a painful expense, but there's no other choice. I called them up and fortunately, they had just received a new shipment and could prepare some right away, so I decided to go pick it up. It might take some time, so feel free to head back home for a while. It could be a nice change of pace. "What? That's too much trouble." Naomi was displeased with my suggestion, but Joseph intervened and said, "Come on. You don't have to go home, but how about a walk?" With that, Naomi reluctantly agreed, "If you say so, Joseph." The couple then left the house. "Do you have some sort of plan?" asked David as the couple left. Of course, I wasn't doing this without a plan. I wouldn't let things go according to Naomi's wishes. "Of course, just leave it to me. At my words, David seemed to relax and smile. This is all a setup for my revenge. Naomi has to pay for what she's done. I've been put down and treated horribly by her time and time again. This was absolutely unforgivable. I couldn't rest until I took my revenge on Naomi, completely and thoroughly. I was even ready to do whatever it took. I was serious. I wondered what Naomi's face would look like when it was all over. Just imagining it made my heart pound. But I calmed myself down. The drama of my revenge had just begun. It was too soon to celebrate. After receiving and cooking the meat from the butcher's shop, David and his wife had just returned home. Looking at the packaging from the butcher's shop on the kitchen counter, Naomi nodded in approval and even had the audacity to tease me. You should have done this from the start. Always complicating things, that's your special skill, isn't it, Mrs. Connolly? The old me would have reacted to every word and been hurt. But now, on the verge of my revenge, I felt no mental pain. I'm sorry to keep you waiting. Please, enjoy. With that, I set 4 steaks on the table. Naomi didn't even bother to say grace and immediately started eating her steak. As soon as she took a bite, she held her cheek and said, "This taste is irresistible. This is the same taste as the butcher I've been going to since I was a child." The feeling of the meat melting in my mouth, exactly. She seemed quite pleased. As I exchanged glances with David, he gave a troubled smile. I'm glad you like it. I put my all into making it, so please eat a lot. As I said that, Naomi made a sour face. The steak is delicious because of the high-quality meat, not because of your cooking skills, Mrs. Connolly. Don't get too full of yourself, okay, she pointed out. I was delighted that she'd easily taken the bait I'd set, and I couldn't help wanting to reveal my trick. I said with a bright smile. But that meat is from the cheap shop in the local market that I prepared at first. I'm glad you're enjoying it so much. At my words, Naomi widened her eyes in surprise. Then, as if it were impossible, she rebelled against me. There's no way cheap meat could taste this good. Stop lying to me just because you don't like me, Mrs. Connolly. This taste is definitely that of high-quality meat. Oh, it's no lie. I did buy high-quality meat, but that's only for our family. The meat that you, Naomi, who isn't even a family member, are eating is definitely from the local market. When Naomi looked at David as if seeking confirmation, he nodded, yeah, it's true. I was watching all along. The meat you're eating, Naomi, is the cheap stuff you disparaged at first. Presumably not thinking that David would lie too, Naomi's face turned bright red as soon as she heard that. That's impossible. After all, cheap meat is just cheap meat. It's strange for it to taste so good. Naomi, becoming almost hysterical, wailed like that. Certainly, if an average person cooked cheap meat, it wouldn't result in a high-quality steak. But I had a secret weapon. I actually worked in a high-end restaurant before I retired. At my sudden revelation, Naomi shrieked, "What?" Ignoring Naomi's surprise, I continued. Listen up. The deliciousness of a dish is certainly influenced by the taste of the ingredients, but what matters most is the right preparation of those ingredients. Even if it's inexpensive, you can still make it taste as good as a high-end dish. That's what I learned during my working years. That's why I couldn't ever forgive you, Naomi, for dismissing it just because it was cheap meat. At my words, Naomi muttered, "No way, and that's impossible," and then pleaded, "That's a lie. You never worked in a high-end restaurant, did you, Mrs. Connolly? Tell me it's a lie." Naomi cast a desperate glance at Joseph. Until now, Naomi, who had been behaving maturely, changed dramatically, and Joseph, who had been somewhat dazed, came back to himself and said, "No, it's not a lie. I often went to Mom's workplace when I was young, and I got to eat delicious food there." His words served as the best proof that my words were true, and Naomi slumped down, muttering, "No way." This is what happens when you measure people by your own selfish standards. If only she had taken a proper look at who I am from the beginning, and treated me with the right amount of respect, none of this would have happened. I couldn't help but chuckle at the sheer naivety of Naomi. But the revenge play isn't over yet. I still have the main dish to serve. Now that it has come to this, I must thoroughly defeat Naomi. Thinking this, I opened my mouth again. Naomi, you always use the excuse that you're a high-class lady, but are you really one? I had been wondering about this for a long time. Honestly, I had never heard Joseph say anything about Naomi being a high-class lady. Of course, there was a chance he simply hadn't mentioned it. If she really was a high-class lady, then it would be rude to doubt her like this. So, this was the perfect opportunity for me. If she was truly a high-class lady and frequently had the opportunity to eat high-quality meat, then she would surely have seen through the true nature of the meat, even if I was the one who cooked it. But Naomi couldn't discern it and even praised the meat. Her behavior as a high-class lady seemed nothing more than fake. If she really wasn't a high-class lady, then she had been telling me a terrible lie. As I stared at Naomi, she averted her eyes in discomfort. She seemed to not want to answer my question. Wait, Naomi a rich girl? No way, Naomi is just from an ordinary family. There's no way she could have married me if she was truly a rich girl. We're from an average household. Even if Naomi didn't answer, Joseph told us the truth. Upon hearing Joseph's words, I nodded in agreement, thinking I knew it. Hey, Joseph! Let's not discuss this now. At Joseph's words, Naomi became flustered, trying to stop him, but it was too late. It turned out that all this time, Naomi had lied when she said, "Because I'm a rich girl." She was just making excuses to trick me. I can't believe it. She went so far as to lie to me in such a horrible way. I can't begin to express how much Naomi's lies hurt me. But I guess, to Naomi, how I felt didn't matter. I was insignificant in Naomi's world. I was taken aback by the lies that had been told for such a long time when Naomi, looking panicked, blurted out her words. So what if I wasn't a rich girl? I am still your daughter-in-law. I married into this family, so it's only right that I should be respected. All I did was make sure I received the respect I deserved. Yes, I lied, but that's not a big deal. I didn't do anything wrong. Naomi continued to insist, I didn't do anything wrong, trying to escape from her guilt. What do you mean you didn't do anything wrong? If you were truly innocent, then what was all the hardship I've been through about? I had been treated poorly by Naomi this whole time. Even when her unfair treatment made me angry, Naomi didn't accept it and used her claim of being a rich girl to escape from her guilt. In the past, I might have forgiven Naomi's actions. At least, I had acknowledged her as a part of the family. That recognition was shattered today. Naomi's reaction to the meat I prepared was the trigger. I had been trying my best to act as a family. I thought that if I could support her, I should. Ideally, I wished we could support each other. But Naomi was the one who crushed these hopes of mine. I wanted to bond as a family, I wanted to hold hands and live together, but Naomi never made any such efforts, and so my dream as a family was crushed. I didn't do anything wrong. It was all Mrs. Connolly's fault. To Naomi, who tried to pin all the blame on me, I responded with a smile. Even if you say I'm the bad one, I don't care. I just can't consider you as family anymore. Please, for the love of God, just don't involve yourself with me anymore. I can't stand the thought of getting along with you, someone who lied to deceive me. I was basically disowning her with those words. Upon hearing this, Naomi, her face filled with despair, pleaded, "No, you're joking, right? We're a family, aren't we? How could you abandon me? We're a family, aren't we supposed to help each other?" Despite having belittled me all this time, Naomi's words sounded as if she were clinging to me. Naomi was the one who never treated me as family. And she has no idea how much hurt she caused me. I'm sorry, but I've made my decision. Whatever you do from now on, I will not involve myself. I will no longer act as your family member. As of today, you are a stranger to me. So, I will no longer grant any of your whims. When I made my stand, Naomi fell silent, dejected. Joseph took Naomi and went back to their house. I've suffered for a long time. Now, all of it has disappeared cleanly, and I'm feeling so refreshed. Afterward, my son and his wife decided to divorce. Apparently, Joseph was furious at Naomi for all the things she had done to me, and their days were filled with endless arguments. Naomi didn't want to divorce, but Joseph's will was unshakable, and the divorce was finalized in mediation. Now, she seems to be living at her parents' house and working like a horse to pay her bills. Joseph occasionally receives messages from her begging to get back together, but he seems to be ignoring all of them. I never knew she was such a person. I really lost out marrying her. Joseph had this to say about Naomi. Indeed, I too felt that getting entangled with such a woman was a disaster. Ever since then, we've been spending very peaceful days. When they divorced, they moved out of the house they had been living in, and Joseph moved in with us, and now we are a family of 3. Whenever I serve my cooking, both Joseph and David are very happy and eagerly dig in. It doesn't matter if the ingredients are expensive or cheap. They appreciate my cooking skills. Being praised for the meals I prepare for my family is my greatest pride. I am sure I will continue to serve my beloved family with my cooking. Until the day my body no longer moves, I want to cherish this ability.